Hello, and welcome to Right to Be Wrong, the show that revives the art of conversation, accommodating varied views on sports, culture, politics, world events, and every topic under the sun. After all, you have a right to be wrong. Here are your hosts, Dave and Tony.
Tone, it's that time of the week. I am going to take a couple of hours out of your life that you will never get back.
More than a couple.
Well, I've been doing it for nearly 3 decades now. So
Don't make me crunch the numbers on that metric.
don't even think about it. It's nearly as bad as thinking about your own death.
That's right.
On that note,
Death is inevitable, Dave, but the price tag isn't. What does it actually cost to bloody die these days?
a lot. And the cost of dying is in so many ways. It's everything from the fights it starts with family, what it costs to put you in the ground or barbecue you, through to some countries that have death taxes. And I read an article in the Financial Review, or the Fin. Hang on.
Knob.
Let me put these on. Oh, if I'm going to discuss the Financial Review, an article, it needs to look like I know that I can read. But no, what actually it was talking about was someone raising the possibility of death taxes. And I'm like, what the? No. And the argument contained in it was, I'm sure it made sense to them, but it completely disregarded all the taxes that have been paid along the way, because the premise was death taxes on anything outside the primary home. And I thought, no, because let's use investment property, equities, whatever. All along the journey, you've paid a whole bunch of taxes, and then it's as if when you die, then we'll take another big slice off it. At some point, we need to accept that if we need money to fund the things that we want in life, it can't always be raising taxes, and particularly lazy taxation, which is who's got the most. Oh, okay. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for a system that proliferates and accelerates inequality, but, something like death taxes, no, I would never support it. In fact, in Australia, I think it'd be a political
Nightmare.
death sentence.
I'm going to go. I don't like to use this term very much, but I think a death tax would truly be un-Australian.
It would be very un-Australian.
Like, I think Australians typically, right, they get it, have to pay tax. The average rate of tax, I don't know, might be 25, 30%. The marginal rate of tax with the Medicare levy is closer to 50. So the last dollar you earn, half of it's going to the government. There are some tax benefits for people. There are some investment property tax benefits. We get that. But I think in general, less so now maybe than 30, 40, 50 years ago, Australians accept the fact that you pay taxes, right, and you get the services that if you need them, they're there, right? And it gives you a level of comfort to know that you might need them. You might be able to fund them yourself. You might be able to afford a private hospital, but someone in your family might go through some tough times and they can't. Well, you know that your taxes are going to a health system. Your taxes are going to an education system. Your taxes are going to invest in safe roads or accessible roads.
Talking like a socialist there, Tony.
No, what I mean, but there's always a mix of, and we've spoken about this before, and I was listening to another podcast during the week around this mix of, capitalism for certain things, socialism for others, and then you find that balance. Because, and the actual podcast went along the lines of, capitalism is not take all the profits until something goes wrong and then look for a handout, right?
Which is true.
That's not capitalism. Capitalism is you ride the risk-reward train for both the ups and the downs, but there's no safety net.
And just for our listeners, as you've seen, I've got Tony Mumdani, as my podcast. No, joking. A healthy, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it in many podcasts and many conversations. A healthy society is actually a mix of capitalism and socialism. And the socialism aspect is that universal healthcare, universal education. So the worst off in society are always at a livable standard.
That's right. And I think Australia largely is there.
Yeah, we do a pretty good job of it.
So to my point, I think Australians accept the fact you need to pay tax. You need to pay quite a bit of tax, but it does provide all these services. Now, throughout your life, if you generate wealth through hard work, through investment decisions, through a bit of luck, whatever it might mean, when you get to the end of that, for the tax man to come and issue a bill on your estate to say, take 15% and give it to us, I would find that unbelievably unfair.
Abhorrent even.
I can't justify that. And I think politically it would be an absolute noose around someone's neck where people would just, whoever introduced it, the opposing party would just lock him into it, and then
you discuss nothing else. All you do is discuss that. It'd be a one policy party killer.
That's right. Now, to your point around, we need to understand that the solution to everything in terms of funding government services is not raising taxes. I'd probably go back a bit and go, what are the things we want to fund and what's important, right? And that's a big pie. And then the money we're going to get in is less than that pie. How much money are we willing to borrow to make up for the shortfall in the pie?
And that's a good question.
And then once you answer all of that, you can make some decisions. Now, I would say that piece that we spoke around, how much are we going to fund, so how much are we going to borrow to fund the missing part of the pie, that shouldn't be for things like healthcare or education, which I would call recurring expenses that happen every year. I don't mind governments borrowing money to invest in important infrastructure that will have long-term value.
And to me, that is the sole acceptable reason to borrow money. For me, if you don't have enough money to cover the social services you want as a society, obviously you want to explore why. But before you just go with this whole raise taxes, maybe you've got to say some of the things we want today are not run efficiently, or we want too much. Because to me, the things that we're talking about, social welfare, so social security payments for someone that is long-term unemployed and they're trying to look, disability support, things like that, I have zero issue. However, we've got something like the National Disability Insurance Scheme that are funding holidays for people that fall within whatever very loose criteria they're using. Now, for me, that's not the very essence of why we created that scheme. It was meant to be to take the load off families that had children with severe disabilities, that their out-of-pocket expenses were extreme, or some of the medical care wasn't covered, or whatever it might be. It wasn't meant to be to start, you can have a holiday once a year on the NDIS. So in that regard, if we start seeing our costs are getting to this point, before we go, we need to raise taxes. We need to actually evaluate where are the inefficiencies, where are the cost blowouts, and is our entire system now getting beyond what we expected in terms of actually being a social security net. Now, that being said too, I think that one of the issues that we do get wrong to actually fund everything, including our own death, because I must say some of I speaking to people recently, and I know a lot of older people, so there's been a lot of death, and you start hearing some of the costs to bury their family. You go, some of them are like $25,000, $35,000.
I know. My mum proudly told me 5-6 years ago that the plot, or not even the plot, the crib at Pinegrove that Tony, it's all paid for. I've bought one for your dad, one for me as well. We're all sorted. And then we were there for someone else's funeral.
Would have been worried if she said, "I've bought one for your dad, and I know the day he's going to die."
That's right. And we were there.
Kill him.
We were there for a family friend's funeral. And Mum wanted me to go and see the crib that she had paid for her and her dad, and I didn't want to deal with it, right? I said, Mum, I don't need to see it. There'll be a time and a place, and it's not here.
It's not now.
But she told me how much it cost, and I almost fell off my chair, right?
How much did she pay for a plot?
No, not the plot. Actually, this is going to be a crib where the coffin.
So this is the whole.
Yeah, where they slide in and they put the
marble.
Yeah.
So that'd be anywhere between 30 and 50.
That's right. It was about 32, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, bloody holy dooly. And that's just for the.
I've always said barbecue me.
That's for the final. I've told my old man I'm going to cremate him and put him in an empty bottle of VB.
Yeah.
Right?
That is so Australian.
He'd love it, right? He'd love the fact being on the mantelpiece, an empty bottle of VB, right? And the boys would go, there's no.
It proved that he finally became full Australian.
That's right.
That's VB right. Bottle. But for me, I think it's crazy. And one of the things that the Mauritian Queen actually says when I say, just barbecue me, honey, the cheapest, if something happened to me tomorrow, I say the cheapest possible cost to actually, put me in the ground, burn me, out to sea, whatever, don't care. And she's like, no, that's not our faith. That's not our faith. I'm like, well, one of the problems with the belief around burial is there's only a finite amount of land available. Right. So for how many hundreds more years can we keep allocating land that's the dead, we can't do anything with it? So at some point, people are going to have to change it, except maybe you get cremated and then your ashes are in a small box and that's the way it goes. Or for me, sprinkle me by out to sea in the tropics somewhere. I'd be happy with that. But just back to the taxation thing too, one of the things I think that we get wrong that starts, the cost of dying, everything that we have around it, is I think philosophically we've got our taxation wrong. We still have an inherent tax model. It's like a margin-based model. So in other words, the government looks at every dollar, how much can we claw out of that? Where I think they need a volume-based model, which is, we work on like a 10% GST, just a consumption tax. But what we want to do is we're not going to have income tax. We're not going to have payroll taxes. We're not going to have stamp duty. We're not going to have all these unnecessary things. They're going to put money back in the pocket of the citizens. And from that, they will be able to go out and spend more. And what we're going to do is take the average day of transactions and purchases from 10 million a day to 50 million a day. And therefore we'll still get the same revenue, but we're generating economic activity.
Yeah, I get it.
So I think that's one way to do it. But in terms of dying too, there's a whole cost to your family, right? You spend a lifetime raising your family and trying to do the right things, and you can be leaving behind a giant fight over whatever assets you have accumulated on the assumption the government hasn't taken a slice first.
That's right, and that's a whole nother discussion around, post dying. Not that we're going to give a shit, but who's going to be haggling over what? Actually, the thought of that, I'm kind of glad.
Well, you actually do, right? Because you take the thought that your boys are at each other's throats after being close all this time.
And I'd be going, really?
Yeah.
Really? It's as I'm drumming it into them now.
Yeah.
Right? I'll actually get out the wheel and I'll change where it says 50-50 at the moment. If someone's pissing me off, there you go. 52-48, cop that.
Well, actually, go one further. Really scare him. So you keep that up. I'm going to put Dave in.
That's right.
No, not Dave. I'll be good.
What about some optional extras, Dave? Premium coffin, some flowers, limousine, a big wake, venue hire, chuck on another $4 to $5 grand.
I understand from people's heart, right? Let's talk from the point of view that most people have a healthy relationship with their parents. Their parents have been good parents. They mean a lot to you. And from your heart, right, you're like this, I want this to be special. I want it to be the send-off. But generally speaking, if you're in that situation where your parents were good, raised you well, loved you, you had a good relationship, the last thing they'd want you to do is take your hard-earned or even their hard-earned and not blow it, because I'm sure you're not going to spend the whole lot, but they're not going to want you to spend so much money on that. For me, when I talk to the Mauritian Queen, I have the serious conversation. I say to her, honey, why I say the minimum amount is I know it's going to be a hard time. Hopefully it's a hard time because you're 90, whatever. It'd be a hard time for the little man, but I'd prefer, let's call it $30,000. I'd prefer cut it down to 10 and spend 20 grand, go to our favorite place, sit and have a holiday and drink gin and watch the sunsets and think about the great times we had. Or if it's the little man, same thing. So I can't think of anything worse than taking money that you'd be going off and remembering the times I was there with you when we were in Singapore, or I was here, or I was there, and it's just being put in a coffin.
Yeah,
and flowers and
And then how many
it's
times?
nearly as bad as wasting money on a wedding.
Yeah, I know. How many times?
Both similar. In some ways, a man dies on both days.
It's right. How many stories have you heard, Dave, of friends or friends of friends where siblings have gone each other hammer and tong, on post burial legal disputes, estates,
too many
legal fees, all of it. Executive fees. Who gets what, claims against the estate. And you just think to yourself, how fractured can it be when it comes to selfishness and, the lure of the dollar?
Well, I can see a lot of people in the future starting to actually deal with this by distributing money when they're alive. And it's, if you still own a property, they'll still be the property, but you'll mitigate the risk because, say, for example, in today's dollars, right, it's easy to be selling a $3 million Sydney property, move up the coast somewhere for $1 million. You got $2 million left over. You might say to your wife, you know what, we got 10 years, honey. We could blow 500 grand in 10 years, cruising, doing this, that, and the other. let's give the kids $500,000 each, right? So then you've made that decision while you're still here, and then as you blow your $500,000, your place on the coast, obviously there could still be a fight over it in the future, but it's less.
Yeah.
Because the less there is, the less likely people are to fight. Because most people, even if you're slightly below average IQ, know that lawyers charge a lot of money, and if you've got a small pool of money to split, who's really going to get it? I think the problem becomes worse the more you have. And particularly, we've seen in Australia, Gina Reinhardt, I think she's been locked in a dispute for like a decade with her kids over money.
I think you're right. And you think about it, if you do start divvying up some of the dollars before you go, it also makes your kids or whoever you leave it to accountable. It's on you now, right? No need to fight. You got that. I've split it down the middle. Now, you want to go piss it up against the wall? You want to go and invest it somewhere? It's all on you.
Correct.
Don't come back to me anymore. There's no pot of there's a bit of gold left at the end of the rainbow, but some of the gold's in your hands now, so it's up to you to do something with it.
Although generally speaking, one thing I have seen that tends to, I'm seeing a bit more of it now that people are accumulating more, because once upon a time, the best you got was your house, and people used to have bigger families, so a house split sort of 6 ways. Didn't go that far. But now as people have superannuation, the growth in the Australian property market, people might have 2, 3, 4, whatever. I think it is a bit different, but I'm also hearing more people that their kids are starting to say to them, we don't want anything. Will you and mum go and travel? Go and spend it. Because if you've been a good parent, generally your kids aren't waiting for you to die to get a hold of your assets, right? That I have known people that, I've met some real nasty people in my lifetime that really are waiting on their parents' death to get hold of financial assets. But let's use some rough numbers, right? Let's say you wait till you're 30 to have kids, which back in the day it was generally earlier. In fact, I'll blow it out to 40. Let's say it's 40. We know normally people have them earlier. And you die at 90. Your kids are going to be 50.
Yep.
So they should have made something of themselves by then, that they shouldn't be, waiting, when's Dad going to fall off the perch? Yeah, it shouldn't be what's going on. But still, it truly does amaze me that your death can, trigger something so terrible between your own kids.
And what about let's touch on the death taxes again. Why does it keep on coming up, Dave? Like, I'm not sure if there are any jurisdictions out there that actually apply death tax at the moment. I think
in Britain.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Britain has one.
I'm not quite sure how they levy it, and I'm not quite sure how they got it up. All right.
I'd say it's probably been something that's been there since the nobles.
Yeah.
They probably brought it in the time where it was a good idea, and it's never been removed because the nobles have probably thought, well, in the rebellion you've got us, and 100 years later, my family will have you back because you'll never be able to accumulate the sort of money that we have.
Here's an interesting one, Dave. Because you touched earlier on the application of a death tax, you would exclude the family home, right? But everything else is fair game.
No, I'd actually exclude everything. I don't think.
Sorry. You talked about
that was the argument.
Yeah. Which is, so let's kind of explore that. What about, Dave? I've done well. I've got 10, 12 million in property over 3 or 4 properties in Sydney.
3 or 4 properties. That's about 2 properties.
I wish,
Sydney now.
Right? And I'm 85 years old, 86 years old, get to 90, eventually pass on. So I've got my main property where I live, and I've got 3 investment properties. Those 3 investment properties get passed on to the estate and into the hands of the beneficiaries of that at the cost of the time, right? So effectively the government gives up the capital gains tax the moment you die, I believe. So if I bought that house, one of the investment properties, for $500,000 in the mid-'80s, and when I die it's worth $2.5 million, it transfers into the hands of my kids at $2.5 million, and they'll only be liable for capital gains tax from that point on.
Yeah, but you've got to remember too that even though that sounds like to some listeners that might sound like there's a $2 million increase that there's nothing from. But along that journey, there's been that you wouldn't get it anyway. So let's say you sold it, they wouldn't count capital gain from 500 to 2.5, the first thing is there's a 50% reduction for owning it for longer than 12 months.
That's
number one.
Yeah, the capital.
So we're down to $1 million. Then they take into account inflation,
indexation,
and indexed. So when it truly gets down to it, there might be a figure of $300,000 they consider is subject to capital gains tax at your marginal tax rate. Now, if you're flying high in the corporate world and you're on 48 cents in a dollar, let's just round it for 50 and make it simple. And you go, well, there's 150 grand. But most people won't do that then anyway. What they do is wait until they retired and they have zero income, and then it would be 300,000 in that year. So, then you start going, oh, well, I paid $90,000 in tax. So it's not as though there's a massive, I know $90,000 is $90,000, but it's not as though through going off to your kids and skipping that part, there's this absolute extreme amount of wealth that is escaping any taxation. And along that journey, you got to remember that those three properties, what they've done, and this is why I'm against death taxes, is those three properties already, because they're not the family home, are subject to land tax. So you'd have paid 1% of the unimproved capital value. Is it 1 or 1.5? Anyway, let's run with 1. You'd have paid 1% of the unimproved land value of each of those properties over those years. Then on the assumption that they were cash positive, because at some point they would have turned, because you're talking about a long accumulation, you'd be paid taxes on the income derived. Then you've been paying rates on those properties. So there's a whole bunch of taxes they've already taken from you. So this concept of a death tax sounds like, what we're doing is we're capturing an amount of money that's not being taxed along the journey. And we're starting to, as citizens all around the world, we should be starting to speak up, because all we ever see is more taxes. When was the last time you heard of a tax being repealed that we don't pay anymore?
Yeah, not
It's
often.
tax on tax on tax on tax.
Yeah.
Now, again, I don't have an issue with tax. And the rates we pay in Australia, for example, I would accept that if our roads, you could run a Formula One race on all our roads. Our hospitals were all like private hospitals. Our schools were producing outstanding kids like the elite private colleges. But that's not the case. There's a lot of waste and misuse. So I think we're at a stage where the last thing you want in a society that's already mismanaging its tax pool, misallocating resources, and I'm being very generous. I won't even talk about things they know they're doing wrong. The last thing you want is a death tax to say, on the assumption those people that might not have a lot of money, and mum and dad's family home at let's call it $2 million in Sydney, which is basic. Oh, we've now picked up $1 million each at 50, 60 years of age. Okay. Good luck to you. That's good. But yeah, it's not, we're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, billions
Dave,
of dollars.
the socialist in me, what's his name? The bloke in New York?
You're talking about Bernie Sanders.
No.
Oh,
The
Mamdani. I can't do Mamdani.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to practice my Mamdani.
that's right.
He doesn't have anything about him that sort of stands out, so you can't impersonate him. He's very forgettable.
So the socialist in me suggests that wealth transfers reinforce this intergenerational inequity, right? You pass on large amounts of dollars untaxed, right? And it creates it further enhances that uneven playing field where you have the haves and the have-nots, and the divide continues to grow. And we kind of spoke about this last week around how that gap gets bigger and bigger between the have and have-nots, and this is just part of it. So why, if you introduce thresholds for the,
I'd like to see the data though on how much of the inequality
I get it,
exists because of, and B is being exacerbated.
Well, what I'm saying is, Dave, that we spoke last week about the ability for parents to help give their kids a step up on the property ladder, right? Creates that uneven result where kids who don't get that are further pushed down, and the kids who do get that, who climb up onto the ladder because they've been given a bit of a hand from mum and dad, that just continues to create that divide. Whereas in the past, you didn't need that to get onto the property ladder. Now it seems that you do.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't think death taxes are the way in which to deal with that. I think that issue is more around supply and demand, really. The through line of supply and demand, it touches on a number of bases. So supply and demand in terms of the materials. So they've gone up by 40%. Supply demand in terms of the labour, it's gone up something like 40%. Supply and demand in terms of the migration patterns of too many people. Supply and demand because, they're restrictive from releasing green new areas, and the supply and demand of local councils now fast because of the ridiculous red tape, how fast they can assess and approve. So I think there's other issues that you don't need a death tax to try and do that. What you need to do is fix the access and opportunity at the front end, and then it won't even be a conversation.
Yeah, but
it's not going to happen quickly anyway.
Part of me thinks, Dave, if you've got 10, 15, $20 million rolling around, you're about to pass down, the government could take 2 or 3%. Nothing wrong with that, Dave. Going to pay some bills for some hospitals.
Look, in theory, I agree with it, right? It sounds like a great concept. But here's the problem. When we talk about this, he died with 12 million. He died with 120 million. He died with 1.2 billion. Here's the problem. Let's use an example right now of some of the world's most famous and richest people. So let's go Bill Gates.
Yep.
Jeff Bezos.
Yep.
And Elon Musk.
Yep.
Right? You think to yourself, come on. When they die, is it really going to hurt if we take 10% as a society? And the short answer is no, it wouldn't. But the conversation is around, oh, come on, these rich guys and inequality and passing it down. Well, those guys weren't all rich themselves. They're all self-made. Now, I want to do a whole podcast and is they're self-made. But I mean, for this purpose, these guys didn't have anything 30 years ago. So what you're effectively saying is you work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. You take the risk. You borrow money. You could lose your family home early. You could be divorced because of everything that goes on. You've made all these sacrifices and you happen to have built a business that turns out to be worth billions of dollars or trillions in the case of these three. And then we go, because of your success, because of your hard work, and I could have done that. I could have worked and started a business. You could have worked and started a business. Everyone around could have done the same thing, right? Because we are talking about, I think Elon Musk is on the cusp of an autistic genius. I don't think Bill Gates is. Bill Gates was someone that just saw the change that computers are the future and got in early and it'll need software, and they actually sold a program they hadn't even created by his own admission. Their very first contract was they went off and got $50,000 for a program they'd yet to design.
Yeah.
So if anything, you'd say he was a crook.
Yeah.
Right? And then for Amazon, the same thing. He moved from – he was a book seller and then just went, I'll go online. So it was first mover advantage. So we're talking about, for the most part, 2 of the 3 of them anyone could have done. So what we're going to say, as a result of your success, your hard work, your sacrifice and your risk-taking, when you die, we all think as a society we're entitled to a chunk of it.
I wouldn't say a chunk.
Even if it's 2 or 3%. Like this, there's an inherent aspect that seems to revivify at a rapid rate through societies, that anytime people have money is that as a society we believe that we have a right to a portion of it. Yeah,
there is a bit of that, I agree.
And again, don't get me wrong, in some cases it's justified, because I'm not saying they shouldn't pay taxes. But that's another statement in and of itself too, right? We say, oh, they don't pay taxes. Well, let's run with it. And let's say the 3 I just mentioned, none of them pay $1 in income tax.
Yep.
Right? How many jobs do they create? How many taxes do the people that have jobs, how many VATs or GSTs are paid through the transactions? How much payroll tax do they pay? How much tax is on the rents that they pay for that? Like, we've got to stop this thing that we say, oh, they don't pay tax. It's not always accurate and true. In fact, I think the numbers are, I think the top 1% in the United States pay over 50% of all taxes paid. So that's the reality. So the top 1% actually pay half the taxes in that country. And again, this is not me saying, oh yeah, free for all. Let's not make rules of the game fair for everyone to have a go. But it's me saying we all have an opportunity to make our lives something beyond average, with some exceptions. And at that point, because we become successful, when we die, does someone have a right to take a last slice before it gets handed down to whoever it might be?
So here's when you speak around those 3 guys, I get it. the impact that they've had, the jobs they've created, the taxes they've paid, the people that they paid who went and spent money on and paid taxes as well. I get it, this massive circular thing. What about people who have actually done well and created significant wealth on the back of tax advantages in certain asset classes like property, right? So I would say if you built a business and it was really successful and then you went and invested that in other businesses or invested it in equities that actually funds other businesses, all well and good. You've played the game. You've done well. But typically in Australia specifically and in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, there's a huge number of people who have invested and leveraged the favourable tax treatment provided for investors in the property market and then doubled down on the back of the insatiable appetite for demand driving prices up so you actually never lose on property. So they've actually leveraged the favourable tax legislation to actually grow their wealth and grow their property empire. Shouldn't we go after a bit of that?
No. And I think, again, because we'll start with, as you mentioned, the legislation. So it's legal. That's the framework. Anyone could do it.
Right there, Dave. Okay, it's legal, but is it right?
No, it's not, right? That's what I'm going to get to. It's legal. They haven't stolen anything. And the average person could do it. Believe it or not, people can do this much cheaper than what they think.
Yeah.
The average school teachers, a couple, let's say, because school teachers often marry school teachers, let's say the two school teachers on 110, 120 each, 240 combined. If they want to live within their means, say, actually, you know what, let's stay in the place that we're at. Instead of upsizing, instead of getting the car, instead of having the holiday, let's buy an investment property and let's use those tax advantages. And by the time we hit the third one, it's going to be easier and easier. Anyone can do it. The average person really can do it. But the average person chooses not to because we like to have a holiday and we don't want to give up the car and we don't want to do those things. So I don't want to start saying we made these rules of the game, and by we accepted it. We vote in governments. We don't go out and protest outside of Parliament House when these laws and we go, hang on, this isn't right. So I don't want to go at people that have played the game fairly. The issue I actually have, and this gets back to the opening of the episode, you made an excellent point. Seriously, you made an excellent point that one of the issues we have around capitalism now is my critique of capitalism outside of hyper-capitalism and some loose regulation is there seems to be this bizarre ideology that if I invest, it can only be positive.
That's right.
It can only be positive. Any losses, I want the government to step in. Now, I'm not talking about claiming your losses in business. I'm saying we had COVID. Governments around the world played politics and didn't listen to the science, and they suddenly locked everyone down and worked from home. Now, that's turned around and changed society because most people now in professional classes work from home at least 20, 30% of the time, if not 100%. So what's that done? Commercial real estate's in less demand. Cafes around central CBDs and restaurants and things have less demand. So who's jumping up and down that's putting pressure on governments? It's the people that own that commercial real estate. Now, those people in commercial real estate have been making trillions and trillions. I can tell you as a small business owner, they rape small business. They rape them. The people making money in Westfields aren't the shops that you're going into unless it's Westfields, like Woolworths, the big anchor tenants. All the others, the best money's been made by the landlord, right? Now, fine. Again, that's the rules of the game. That's what it was. But the rules have changed. So if your office space now has gone from being worth $1,000 a square metre to being worth $99 a square metre, that's not my problem.
That's right.
Bad luck. I don't want the government to come and save you. So the same thing is this. With our properties, if we want to fix it and we want to say, well, we don't want a death tax, what we say is, well, the reason that you've had this exponential growth is, yes, you took the risk. Yes, you borrowed. But you know what? 600,000 people a year into a country, or 500,000, a whole new Canberra, it's too much. It's too much. We're cutting it off. And if you now have just spent $2 million on the assumption you're going to keep getting 10% in the next few years and your $2 million in 10 years' time is still $2 million, well, bad luck. You had good years, you have bad years. So I think that would be a better way to do it, is not start adding a tax after we die, but starting to fix the rules of the game that give the next generation the opportunity onto the ladder and start to remind people investment can be positive, it can be negative. And we're not here to step in and save you when you make bad decisions all the time. Just as in when you make good decisions, we're not going to step in. And the other thing I hate is a windfall tax.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So, a windfall tax, you struggle for a decade. Now things are going good and you didn't hand me money for the 10 lean years. So again, I think it's a narrative within Western societies. We're starting to raise people every time there's a problem. We don't want to address the real problem. We don't want to change the rules of the game. We don't want to take accountability. We love just pointing to the group at the top.
No, I agree. And I think there's a lot more commentary now around there are some things that are happening in terms of assets and valuations of assets relative to the fundamentals, where even some economists that I listen to are going, something's just not quite right here. So, for example, typically shares don't go up at the same time as gold, right? And they are at the moment, right? Yep. So there's some fundamentals where these asset values have just gone through the roof, the property keeps on going up, the equity's at all-time highs, and people are going, at what stage is this going to pop, right?
Well, the equities is a big one, because not only when you say equities are going up, it's not like 500 companies are going up. They are, because all ships rise and fall on the tide, but they're being led by the sort of five or six big companies, NVIDIA, Alphabet, Microsoft, things like that.
Absolutely. So, and I say to myself, I was kind of speculating as I was driving in listening to this other podcast, and I said to myself, I can only imagine if equities got hammered, or God forbid, property got smacked in Sydney and Melbourne, the crying and bitching about wanting a government handout to sort it, right?
Well, what people should be crying and bitching about is you see that our government here wants to start using our superannuation for their policies.
Now that's actually incorrect, right? You know, and I know that superannuation funds are governed by trustees. Trustees have got their own boards. That's not the government. The government can't direct trustees of a super fund to go and invest in property. I will accept that, but what I mean is, let me rephrase it. Go on.
The government wants it to be where they will start to, push for that to support it.
And the reason being, because at the moment, the amount of super that Australia has accumulated and now keeps on compounding, we're actually running out of things to invest in. So now we're actually, I think, a net investor overseas now. A lot of our money's going overseas.
Now, I have said before, and I'll say it again, I don't have an issue and not a government of the day to fund their pet projects. But if it was bipartisan and we said, actually, we do have a big Australia policy, we are behind on infrastructure and we are going to need massive amounts of infrastructure in the future, we are going to say that 20%, 10%, 15%, whatever number you want to make it, of all superannuation must be invested in Australian infrastructure projects with a fixed return. So that means all the toll roads, all those sorts of things are owned by Australian super. But you're not going to have years where I got 13% this year, I got 7% this year, I got 9%. What you're going to get is, to ensure those tollways are affordable, what you're going to have is cost plus. So you're going to say cost plus 5%. So what you know is year in, year out, there's 20% of superannuation that generates a 5% return. It doesn't have a high risk. It doesn't go up. It doesn't go down. And then the other 80%, 75%, whatever number it's going to be, that's when you can invest in equities. You can invest in different things.
I think we should mind you, it's a shame, Dave, because there's so many good things that on a bipartisan basis could be achieved. But on one side, the coalition or parts of the coalition are actually anti-super and superannuation. And then you get the conspiracy theorists who say, oh, they're taking money out of my pocket. Because what really annoys me about dumb people is when they say that 12% is mine. It's as if we should scrap super, right?
Well, technically it is.
I know, but do you honestly? Thanks, Siri. No, that wasn't me.
Siri just interrupted the podcast just to tell Tony something.
It's one of those things, Dave.
Even a woman on your wrist will still tell you what to do, Tone.
It's one of those things, Dave, where if employers were not paying 12% super for you at retirement, do you honestly think if we said stop super, do you honestly think how much of that 12% would end up back in your pocket as an increased wage week to week.
No, listen, I agree, but I actually don't agree with superannuation either. Having said that, I understand why we have it because I'm well aware I've had clients over the years that were on the old defined benefit. And for people that don't know what defined benefit means, it means there is a percentage of your last year's salary indexed at CPI. So generally speaking, that was for police and teachers and defence force. So what that meant is you had people that were retiring as, say, a police inspector on the equivalent of $200,000 today, getting 70% of that being $140,000 at the inflation rate, indexed at inflation. In other words, it would go up every year equivalent with inflation, so you never fell behind. Now, this was brought in at a time where, on average, people might have retired 55, 65 and died 65, 75. These defined benefits also, when you died, went off to your wife. But again, she might not last that much longer than you. In today's world where people are living comfortably to 100, I had someone that retired at 51. He joined the force at 18 years of age. So he clocks up his 33 years, retires an inspector, but then he died at 95. So we paid him longer than what he was in the police force. So to try and get rid of those defined benefit pensions, because that's really where it wasn't the old age pension. That wasn't what was driving us bankrupt. The superannuation scheme is what then came in.
But it also is helping a whole lot more people be self-funded.
It sounds good in theory, but here's the other problem. Because you once you hit a certain age, you can take out as much as you want from super. So again, using that number that people live to 95, 100, if at 75, your last bit of super, you take out 150,000, you buy a recreational vehicle, you buy an RV, and you go around Australia in your RV. When you get back, you got nothing left in super. So guess what happens?
Back on the pension.
Back on the pension.
Yeah, okay.
So it hasn't eradicated a pension anyway.
Oh, it has to some extent.
So it's minimised. Yeah. It's minimised.
Which is what they want, right? Which is what they want.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. I did actually see something. I haven't dug enough into it yet, so I don't want to go too deep in case I'm wrong, because just like the Fonz, I hate being
It was his birthday the other day, by the way.
Wrong. How old's Henry Winkler?
80.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I did see, and I'll give some kudos here. I'll assume this is the Albanese government's idea. It might not be, but I'll give kudos. That they're changing the old age pension from here's the age, you get it, to a sort of needs / occupational, because what they're trying to do is push it to 70, but they've now realised, we can't have 70-year-old bricklayers. So they are starting to say from 60, depending on what you've done for a job and all other things will be considered, you might be able to access a pension earlier, which I know might piss people off that you get yours at 70, you get yours at 60. But if you want yours at 60 rather than 70, don't sit in the office at Sydney. You go and lay bricks for 50 years and then you'll get
that's a practical approach, right?
It is a practical approach.
People have busted their back should be able to get access to the pension earlier.
Correct.
I absolutely agree.
Correct.
I've had multiple paper cuts in the last 30 years.
It's a killer, Tone.
Do I get my pension early?
You should. You should. I mean, paper cuts are just the worst. Is there anything worse? There's only one thing worse. If you get the black lung pup.
I was going to say, now that we're talking about death, I was actually going to say, Dave, and we'll close out on the topic. Will you do me the honour of actually speaking at my funeral and delivering my you googly?
I'm a good you googleizer. You didn't think I knew what a you googly was, but yeah, of course I will. Actually, I'll probably die before you. Look how fat I'm getting.
And what
they say blacks are slimmer. How big would I look on the podcast if I wasn't wearing black?
Can you give me some theme songs, Dave, for my funeral, and I'll give you some for yours?
Oh, you've definitely got to have Hall & Oates. Yeah,
Private Eye.
No. What you got? From when they're in the, he shows him, he says, what smudge is that? Says, Randy Jackson from American Idol. What I want, you got that might be hard to handle. So there's one.
Of course, what about What is Love?
Oh, definitely. Hadaway. What is Love is going to be there. I'm going to be there with Paddy and Dom, and we're just going to do
What is Love?
But I think I'll go before you anyway.
I think for you, I'll be ripping out Who Let the Dogs Out.
I definitely got to be Who Let the Dogs Out. And What's the matter, you?
What's from Joe Dolce?
Yeah. Shut up your face. Hey. Yeah, you definitely got to do that.
And then I'd have some type of you googly that touches on wokeness
Yeah, yeah. And how he died happy because the Rainbow Mafia was dead.
That's right. Now, Dave, let's close out on this one. So we know that dying actually is expensive. We're
It's very
talking
expensive.
that's practical, but for me, it's more. There's a financial piece, I get it, but what would really cost a lot in anyone's death is if the aftermath and then the trauma that's occurring when people can't work out who's going to get what. Like imagine the emotional burden that you would take into the grave knowing that your two sons or your kids or whoever it might be
Are
arguing about exactly. Right.
Yeah, it's actually I've heard some strange things where, you know, there's been big family arguments because mum used to paint and there was a particular painting that someone liked and then it got left to another brother and then the other brother steals it. And I'm like, really? Like,
have you heard, like, I was blown away by this where I heard another friend of a friend where, like, the grandparents had passed away, the grandma had passed away, then when the granddad passed away, the kids are in there putting Post-it notes on stuff.
yeah.
Like, I think,
It's crazy.
Are you for real?
I know.
Like, seriously, like, I hope my mum and dad outlive me, and they probably will, right? But if they don't, like, I'll be going to my brother, what are we doing with all this stuff, bro?
Yeah.
Right.
But also it's like, to me, you would want your mum and dad, like if you've had a good relationship, you don't want their things. You want them.
That's right.
Now, I can understand you want some things. You go, oh, yeah, Marco, do you have an issue if I had that? Because I remember once
That's
when
right.
and it just reminds me of mum. Do you
Yeah.
mind if I have that? Like,
Yeah.
I get that sort of thing.
But
The
not
sense
just I'll
of
take that, I'll
value.
take that. And then like 3 weeks later, it's all on Facebook Marketplace. Like, what
Yeah.
the hell?
Yeah.
Like, how did we get there?
Well, my plan is to actually retire rich and die poor. So there is nothing to fight over anyway. So, yeah. Or it might be I'm fighting over my back hair. That might be it. And the wax strips, keep it. So, that looks like a 2025. I'll keep that one.
You've gone there. If you've opened up the Pandora's box on that one, have a guess who went and had his first laser treatment on his back last Friday.
Was it sharks with laser beams?
Laser beams.
How'd it go?
Didn't hurt either, Dave.
Really?
I was all pumped up. I got told it might hurt Tony. It might hurt Tony. I went there. I said, let me know when you're going to start. And she started. And it's not, every now and then you might feel a bit of a prick. But then
that's called Monday nights with me.
It's the smell. It's the smell, Dave, of burning hair.
Oh, wow.
It was troubling. Anyway, I've got a few more treatments to go before I.
Do they do like patches? Or
Yes.
they do the whole back?
They do the whole back of
thing?
one. Like they've got this little zapper thing, and they go through zones of the back. It was amazing, right? It took 15 minutes.
So what I meant by patches is like it's not one patch, you're bald and you're coming back next.
No.
The whole back.
The whole back gets done.
But then
and they reckon
back
every
again.
time you go, between 10 and 15% of the hairs are gone. So you keep over 6 to 8 sessions, most of it will go. But the thing is,
What kind of accountant are you? 6 to 8 sessions on 10%, 60 to 80%.
10 to 15, 12 and a half
Yeah,
is the
save
average.
yourself,
8 times 12 and a half is 100.
Yeah, that's 100.
8 12 to 96, add
Yeah.
the extra 4. There you go, pal.
Well done, big
I'm
accountant.
all over it.
You're on that.
Dave, so you know what? Dying is expensive. Let's avoid it for as long as we can, right?
Yeah. Or let's set up the cheapie beforehand.
That's right.
So A, we don't want any death taxes. B, let's make sure our families know that cardboard box and I've already bought the matches and there's already a litre of fuel over there. And by the way, it's not premium
That's right.
because you don't need high octane fuel.
91.
Yeah. We didn't start the fire.
That's right.
But yeah, all you need is some cheap stuff. And then let's give away whatever it is we have beforehand to save the fights. And therefore, we'll pre-plan and we'll reduce our personal cost of dying.
Too easy, Dave. What do we always say?
You have a right to be wrong.
Take care, mate.
Thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. Like us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.